On what seemed like a routine day, British police pulled over a matte black Cybertruck, but what they actually stopped was much more significant. In that moment, they didn't just halt a vehicle. They called into question Elon Musk's credibility, Tesla's global ambitions, and possibly the entire electric vehicle revolution. No one saw it coming. Not investors, not fans, not even Tesla. You've heard of vehicle bans before, but nothing quite like this. This wasn't bureaucracy or administrative hurdles. This was a flat-out rejection. A foreign government declaring Tesla's most ambitious, expensive, and hyped creation as illegal, unsafe, and unwelcome. So why did the United Kingdom shut the door on the Cybertruck? How did one traffic stop trigger a financial shockwave? And how might this affect your wallet next? The moment the Cybertruck's front wheels touched British soil, it was already in legal trouble. This wasn't about missing paperwork or a forgotten inspection. The reality was far more damaging. The Cybertruck couldn't, and likely never, would, meet the requirements of British automotive law. The core issue lay with the Certificate of Conformity, a non-negotiable document required for any vehicle to be sold in both the European Union and the United Kingdom. The Certificate of Conformity ensures that any vehicle meets regional safety, emissions, and environmental standards. Tesla never secured this certification for the Cybertruck, and the reason was simple. It couldn't pass the required tests. The British government cited a long list of violations. Most notably, the Cybertruck's sharp, angular exoskeleton posed a serious danger to pedestrians and cyclists. In a collision, its rigid steel panels wouldn't crumple to absorb impact. They'd slice. That alone was enough for disqualification, but the issues went much deeper. The Cybertruck's steer-by-wire system, which replaces traditional mechanical steering with a fully digital setup, was outright banned under UK law. British regulations demand a physical backup for steering, and Tesla's system offered none. Then came the lighting problem. UK standards require clearly separated lights for braking, signaling, and visibility. The Cybertruck's single, continuous light bar broke every rule. Weight was another major issue. With a curb weight over 3,200 kg, the Cybertruck edged dangerously close to the 3,500 kilo limit for standard Category B driver's licenses. In some versions, it even exceeded that threshold, meaning the average British driver would legally need a commercial license just to operate it. This wasn't a case where a few adjustments could fix things. The UK didn't merely reject Tesla's paperwork. They rejected the Cybertruck's entire existence. And once the UK shut the door, the rest of Europe began to follow. The very design that once made Tesla seem unstoppable became the reason it was unwelcome. Tesla marketed it as a futuristic tank. Europe saw it as a weapon. The Cybertruck was meant to revolutionize the pickup, with a bold, angular shell and cold-rolled stainless steel engineered to resist dents and scratches. In the US, that was a triumph. In Europe, it spelled disaster. It symbolized strength, resilience, and durability, at least in the United States. But in Europe, the Cybertruck represented something very different: danger. Modern vehicle safety regulations in Europe go beyond protecting the people inside the vehicle. They focus on everyone: pedestrians, cyclists, even occupants of other cars. The Cybertruck's unyielding structure eliminated crumple zones, meaning in a high-speed collision, it would transfer the full force of the impact directly into whatever it struck, whether that be a smaller car, a cyclist, or a pedestrian. To European regulators, this wasn't a marvel of engineering. It was a public safety threat. But beyond safety concerns, something deeper was at play: a cultural rejection of American automotive excess. In the US, bigger is often better. In Europe, priorities lean toward efficiency, practicality, and social responsibility. The Cybertruck's imposing size and aggressive design were seen not as innovative, but as symbols of American bravado. In a market that values restraint, Tesla never hid the truck's polarizing look. It was proudly built into its identity. But that bold design philosophy ultimately clashed with the hard limits of European regulation. Elon Musk wasn't caught off guard. He saw this coming and let it happen anyway. He knew the truck wouldn't meet European standards and built it regardless. Back in 2020, Musk admitted in an interview that the Cybertruck couldn't pass EU safety tests and that a smaller, lighter version would be necessary to sell it there. That version never came. Instead, Tesla charged ahead with the North American model, unchanged, unapologetic, and fundamentally incompatible with European law. This wasn't just a design choice. It was a calculated gamble. Musk pitched the Cybertruck as a rebellious statement, a disruptive force meant to challenge norms and dominate rivals. But European regulators didn't flinch. They didn't adapt. They walked away. The UK's rejection wasn't just a legal hiccup. It triggered the unraveling of Tesla's public narrative. A vehicle meant to lead headlines with its innovation was now infamous for being illegal. And when Europe responded with a decisive no, the consequences hit fast and hard. Tesla's stock began to tumble. What should have been a minor regulatory incident turned into a full-blown investor crisis. News that the UK had not only banned the Cybertruck, but physically seized one from a civilian driver in Manchester, wiped billions off Tesla's market value. The shock was immediate and surgical. Only fear can cause that kind of reaction, and the shock was immediate. Within hours, Tesla's market valuation plummeted by more than $12 billion, a staggering loss for a company once seen as the unshakable leader of the electric vehicle revolution. Market analysts didn't need time to process what had happened. The Cybertruck was never just another vehicle. It was a cornerstone of Tesla's future, a symbol of disruption aimed at reshaping the global truck market. But now, that future looked uncertain, even broken. Investors who once celebrated Tesla's bold design language and Elon Musk's fearless risk-taking began to question whether the Cybertruck had become a liability instead of a leap forward. And it wasn't just the stock that suffered. Sales in key European markets took a nosedive. Even before the Manchester seizure, Cybertruck pre-orders in Europe were waning. After the incident, interest collapsed entirely. In countries like Germany, the Netherlands, and Norway, once strongholds of electric vehicle enthusiasm, consumer forums lit up with outrage and disbelief. Tesla's European web traffic fell sharply. Reservation holders began cancelling, demanding refunds, or simply disappearing. The Cybertruck had gone from a futuristic icon to an international embarrassment overnight. Media coverage intensified the crisis. Headlines across Europe read like obituaries. Tesla's Cybertruck dreams crushed, banned and seized, Tesla's worst week yet, and from futuristic to forbidden. US financial networks quickly joined the pile-on. On Wall, street analysts described the event as a watershed moment, likening it to past regulatory collapses that triggered major tech stock crashes. Within days, Tesla was no longer being discussed as the future of mobility, but as a cautionary tale, an example of what happens when a company overestimates its ability to sidestep international law. And as the numbers fell, so did public sentiment. The Cybertruck, once a status symbol, was now viewed by many as a mark of arrogance. What had been a head-turning design was suddenly drawing suspicion, and sometimes outright hostility. Across social media, images spread of Cybertrucks in European cities vandalized with spray paint, scratched by keys, or plastered with protest stickers. What began as regulatory rejection had quickly evolved into a cultural backlash. In London, climate activists draped a banner over a parked Cybertruck that read, "Not welcome here." In Berlin, a Cybertruck was egged during rush hour while the owner sat inside. In Paris, protesters confronted a Tesla showroom attendant at a pop-up exhibit, accusing the company of masking American aggression as innovation. For many Europeans, the vehicle had become more than a safety concern. It symbolized Silicon Valley's arrogance. But the anger wasn't limited to Europe. In the United States, the backlash took on a political edge. Progressive groups, already critical of Elon Musk's ties to controversial figures and his deregulation rhetoric, began organizing informal boycotts. In cities like San Francisco and Portland, some Tesla owners reported being heckled, while others faced what EV drivers call icing, a protest tactic where drivers of gas-powered vehicles block EV charging stations, now used to target Tesla specifically. Then there was Elon Musk himself, the lightning rod for the entire controversy. His defiant tone on social media and refusal to acknowledge the regulatory fallout only deepened divisions. His statement, "Europe can do what it wants, but we build for freedom," went viral, mostly among critics. By trying to make the Cybertruck a symbol of rebellion, Musk had inadvertently made it a target. This wasn't just bad PR. It was a collapse in brand equity. Tesla had long been seen not just as a car company, but as a movement. Now, that movement was splintering. Once loyal fans were beginning to question everything. While Tesla reeled, its rivals moved quickly. The Cybertruck's failure in Europe didn't happen in a vacuum. It created a vacuum. And competitors were ready. Within weeks of the UK ban, European automakers launched ad campaigns focused on safety, compliance, and regional design. Volkswagen led the charge with its ID lineup, running ads in major German and Scandinavian papers with the headline, "Designed for Europe, built for you." It didn't mention Tesla by name. It didn't have to. BMW followed with a visual comparing its EX electric SUV fitting neatly within standard European lanes, against an outline of the much wider Cybertruck spilling over. Hyundai's Ioniq line highlighted its top safety ratings for pedestrian protection. Startups jumped in too. Companies like KGM, which manufactures the Muso EV, an electric pickup tailored for European needs, began receiving investment offers and fleet orders, many of which had originally been headed Tesla's way. Even local governments responded. Municipalities that had previously shown interest in Tesla's utility vehicle shifted to smaller, lighter alternatives that complied with emissions and road safety rules. This wasn't just marketing, it was a market shift. Investors noticed. Hedge funds and institutional firms began reallocating their EV portfolios, trimming Tesla exposure and boosting stakes in competitors. Tesla's once dominant narrative had fractured. A new story was taking shape, one where the future of electric vehicles might not belong to the loudest voice in the room. But the most damaging blow didn't come from competitors. It came from within. The Cybertruck debacle exposed more than just a flawed product. It revealed cracks in Tesla's entire business model. For over a decade, Tesla had relied on a direct-to-consumer sales approach, bypassing traditional dealerships in favor of online sales and branded showrooms. It worked well in the US, but in Europe, it had always been a legal tightrope. Now, with the Cybertruck drawing regulatory fire, European governments had the perfect excuse to finally cut that rope. In countries like Germany and France, the scrutiny was just beginning. Legal petitions from dealership associations began piling up, accusing Tesla of violating fair trade and transparency laws. Regulators who had once taken a lenient stance now shifted aggressively. Their reasoning was straightforward. If Tesla could bypass licensing norms, sell vehicles that didn't meet local standards, and continue operating without traditional oversight, what message would that send to the rest of the auto industry? Even the United Kingdom, despite banning the Cybertruck, launched an inquiry into Tesla's broader business practices. Lawmakers proposed legislation that would require automakers to partner with local dealerships if they wanted access to government subsidies or EV infrastructure incentives. It was a direct challenge to Tesla's core business model, and one that found support beyond just politics. Consumer advocacy groups joined in, arguing that without traditional dealerships, buyers lacked proper support in the event of recalls, servicing issues, or disputes. The Cybertruck fiasco gave that argument teeth. Now there were Tesla customers, stuck with banned vehicles, left in limbo. Public trust began to unravel, not just in the product itself, but in the very process by which Tesla sold it. For years, Tesla had shaken up the industry with speed, style, and a proud rejection of old norms. Now those very norms were coming back with a vengeance, and if Tesla's direct-to-consumer model buckled under the pressure, the Cybertruck wouldn't be the only casualty. Could Tesla fix the Cybertruck? Technically, yes. Realistically, not without gutting its brand and budget. On paper, the solution sounds simple. Redesign the truck to meet European regulations. But that would mean dismantling everything that made it famous. Its sharp, angular design, its bold proportions, its unapologetic defiance. The very identity of the Cybertruck would have to be rewritten. It wouldn't just be a tweak here or a minor adjustment there. Fixing it would require re-engineering the body, softening the steel shell, splitting up the LED light bar, cutting weight, and retrofitting safety systems. All of that demands new tooling, new production lines, and fresh rounds of approval in each EU country. The cost? Billions. The timeline? Years. And even if Tesla committed to that level of reinvention, it would be a public admission of failure. Musk's entire business model hinges on scale. One product, globally deployed. Creating a Cybertruck Europe edition wouldn't just strain production logistics, it would shatter the image of Tesla's design invincibility. The Cybertruck was marketed as the anti-truck, the vehicle that would never compromise. To compromise now would make Tesla look weak. But the cold truth is this: even if Tesla rebuilt the Cybertruck to pass every European regulation, Europe still wouldn't want it. It's not just banned, it's incompatible. The Cybertruck was designed for America's sprawling freeways and oversized lots, not for Europe's centuries-old cities and narrow streets. Its width alone makes it unmanageable in urban areas like Paris, London, or Rome. Parking would be a nightmare. Side streets would become obstacle courses, and its weight puts it dangerously close to or over the 3,500 kilo threshold that, in countries like the UK, requires a commercial Category C1 driver's license. Most consumers will never apply for one. The problem isn't just infrastructure, it's culture. In America, big trucks are a lifestyle. In Europe, they're seen as overkill. The Cybertruck's aggressive size and look weren't features. They were red flags. What Tesla saw as revolutionary, Europe saw as arrogant. It became a rolling symbol of American excess. And that made it impossible to sell, no matter how innovative the tech might be. And as Europe turned its back, another market began to waver. For the first time, consumers outside Europe began questioning their loyalty to Tesla. The fallout was no longer regional, it was global. Visionaries who argued that Tesla and the Cybertruck represented bold steps forward. To them, the backlash wasn't about safety or compliance. It was fear of change, a stubborn resistance to progress. They pointed to the Cybertruck's advanced tech, from steer-by-wire to its nearly indestructible exoskeleton, and asked, why punish innovation just because it doesn't fit the mold? On the other side stood the regulators, and increasingly, the public. They argued that innovation without responsibility is just recklessness in disguise. Laws exist to protect lives, they said, not to stifle creativity. Safety standards aren't suggestions. They're requirements born of hard-earned lessons. The Cybertruck didn't challenge outdated regulations. It ignored essential ones. No crumple zones, no compliant lighting, no mechanical steering fallback. The Cybertruck, they argued, wasn't too advanced for the law. It was too careless. And then came the middle voices. People who admired Tesla's ambition but questioned its judgment. They asked, why wasn't there a European version? Why didn't Tesla anticipate the fallout? Why did Musk, knowing the truck wouldn't be legal, push forward anyway? For many, the answers pointed to one thing: hubris. Elon Musk had built a product for America and assumed the world would follow. When it didn't, the blame game began. Was Tesla punished for daring to be different, or for believing it was above the rules? That question didn't just dominate headlines. It began reshaping boardroom discussions, legal strategies, and public policies around the world. In Washington, U.S. lawmakers debated whether America should adopt its own weight-based EV tax to prevent what Europe was calling electric bloat. In Tokyo, regulators quietly added urban EV size restrictions to their next round of policy planning. And in Australia, safety boards launched a full review of imported electric trucks and SUVs, citing the Cybertruck as a cautionary tale. Tesla had once led the world into the electric age. Now it had inadvertently triggered a global conversation about what kind of electric future we actually want. One where bigger is better, or one where smarter wins. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. The Cybertruck wasn't just a vehicle anymore. It was a mirror, reflecting back the contradictions of modern innovation. Bold yet blind, brilliant yet brittle. A triumph of engineering and a failure of foresight. And in that reflection, the world saw more than just Tesla. It saw the future of transportation, still unwritten and still up for debate. The believers in disruption argued that government regulations were stifling progress, burdening innovation with red tape and fear. On the other side were regulators, safety advocates, and everyday citizens raising a fundamental question. When does innovation cross the line into recklessness? The Cybertruck ban highlighted a growing tension that had been simmering for years. European regulators prioritized public safety, crafting laws focused on pedestrian protection, weight restrictions, and crash survivability. Meanwhile, Tesla had spent the past decade defying those standards, betting on the strength of its brand and technology to overcome any resistance. This wasn't new territory for Tesla. The company's history is full of clashes with regulators, from autopilot controversies in the US to software compliance issues in Germany. Elon Musk consistently framed these battles as a struggle between bold visionaries and slow-moving bureaucrats. But the Cybertruck incident felt different. This time, the public wasn't backing Tesla. People were questioning whether a vehicle, resembling a battering ram, belonged on urban streets. The debate quickly escalated across social media, talk shows, and corporate boardrooms. Was Europe being overly cautious? Were these regulations outdated remnants of the gas-powered era? Or had Tesla finally gone too far by designing something inherently unsafe? While the world debated, Tesla's competitors seized the moment. As Tesla grappled with European regulators, the rest of the auto industry quietly surged ahead. Behind the scenes, rival automakers watched the Cybertruck controversy, not with fear, but with quiet satisfaction. As Elon Musk defended his design, in regulatory hearings and online, companies like Ford, General Motors, and Volkswagen focused on developing region-specific electric vehicles, something Tesla had consistently avoided. Ford doubled down on smaller, Europe-friendly electric SUVs. General Motors re-engineered its Ultium platform to meet Europe's strict safety standards. Hyundai and Volkswagen rolled out EVs tailored to pedestrian safety laws, designed for tight streets and dense cities. Even Chinese manufacturers, once criticized for their aggressive global strategies, began shifting course. Companies like BYD started testing smaller pickups suited to Europe's regulatory environment. The industry had recognized what Tesla refused to see. The one-size-fits-all approach was no longer viable. With each passing month that Tesla spent fighting with regulators and losing public favor, its competitors gained ground. Market data started to reflect the shift. Consumers who had once been enthusiastic about the Cybertruck turned instead to brands like Hyundai, Volkswagen, and Peugeot. Fleet buyers removed Tesla from their future plans. Tesla wasn't losing because it wasn't innovative. It was losing because it wouldn't adapt. And Elon Musk was approaching a decision that could define the future of his company. Tesla had arrived at a crossroads: adapt or collapse. The company faced two options: either spend billions to redesign the Cybertruck for Europe, or walk away from the market entirely. There was no middle ground. With mounting pressure from regulators, customers, and rivals, compromise was no longer an option. A full redesign would mean more than tweaking a few features. It would require rebuilding the vehicle from the chassis up, modifying its frame, adjusting its steering, lighting, and safety systems to comply with European standards. This overhaul would take years and cost billions. It would mean halting current production, renegotiating supplier contracts, and developing an entirely new platform. But doing so could preserve Tesla's future in Europe and repair its brand image. The alternative, abandoning the European market, would allow Tesla to keep the Cybertruck as a US-exclusive model, built for wide roads and spacious parking lots. Yet the cost of that choice would be steep. Europe remains one of the world's most lucrative EV markets, and walking away would hand that opportunity to Tesla's competitors, who are already winning customers with city-ready, regulation-compliant electric vehicles. It would trap Tesla in a shrinking, oversaturated North American market, just as new competitors from Asia and Europe began flooding in. More than a business decision, walking away from Europe would signal something far more damaging. It would show that Tesla was no longer leading the EV revolution, but simply reacting to it. Elon Musk's empire had reached a pivotal moment. Adapt, invest, and rebuild, or retreat, shrink, and risk, losing the electric vehicle crown for good. If Tesla chooses the wrong path, recovery might not be possible. So the real question now is whether Tesla will commit the resources to reinvent the Cybertruck for a global market that's already shifting away, or if this will be the turning point we look back on as the beginning of its decline. Can Elon Musk steer the company back on course, or is this the first real crack in Tesla's foundation?